I love spotting for Kyle. He is very fast. He qualifies excellent. He's a good race car driver. We won that race on Saturday, and my son was born the next day. If you've never been to a NASCAR race, go to a NASCAR race. It don't matter where it's at. It don't matter which one.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Pit Crew Podcast. Forget this, episode number 18. Today, we got a special guest coming on very soon. That's going to be two-time Daytona 500 champion spotter Tal Boyd. Cameron, how you feeling about this one? Episode number 18. Your third episode, and we still going, buddy.
We're still going. We are just getting started here on the Pit Crew Podcast. Sorry in advance if I sound a little bit different than usual. I'm just getting over a cold. But other than that, I'm pumped up. And let's bring in our guest of honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tal Boyd on the show. Tal, how you feeling, my man?
Oh, doing great. How's it going out there?
Oh, it's fun. We're looking forward to Talladega. I know that's one that you are definitely looking forward to for the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the NASCAR Cup Series coming up. Yeah. How do you feel about Talladega this weekend?
Man, I love going to Talladega. I consider it my home race because I'm from Pensacola, Florida, and I love going down there. You see so many family and friends. The race fans are awesome. Everybody just loves to be there, whether it's the infield or the grandstands. It's a cool place with a great atmosphere.
We're going to see you on the Talladega Boulevard.
I'd stay away from the boulevard. I like to take my camper down. I like to take the grill and the smoker, and I take time to see the people that I know and hang out with them.
So we're going to start from the beginning. Basically, you told us that you're from Florida. Tell us a little bit about that, about where you're from, and how did you get into NASCAR and spotting in one of the top racing divisions in the world?
Yeah, it's been a very long process. I get that question a lot, like, how do you become a spotter? And it's not a thing that happens overnight. I'm originally from Pensacola, Florida. My dad grew up. Whenever I grew up, my dad was racing at a local short track every week. So he was a race car driver. I grew up around racing, got to meet so many people my entire childhood. And when the big boys came to town and what was all pro racing, just got to meet crew guys that came down from the Cup Series and the Busch Series. And it was such a long process of just sweeping floors and being around the place. Whenever I was 13, my family moved to North Carolina, and my first job was mowing the grass at Darrell Walter's race shop during the summer. And after I was finished with that, I would go in and sweep up the floors and just get to meet people and know people. And that graduated up whenever I was in high school. I got out of school a little bit early to be able to work on a race team, and then I finally started traveling when I was 18. So this is my 27th year in NASCAR racing, and it's basically working from the bottom up, sweeping floors and busting down tires to being a tire guy. And then I went over the wall and was a tire changer for about 6 years, and got the opportunity during that time. I built my own race car, and I raced some short tracks myself and learned so much just being able to do it. And I translate that into helping the guys that are driving now, being a spotter. I let them know the things that I would want to hear if I was in their shoes. And so that really helps to have that experience. You don't have to have that experience, but it sure does help. So just progressed through small teams and getting to know people and made it up to the big ranks with quite a bit of success, and it's been a good adventure.
So you're one of the best spotters in the Cup Series, and it sounds like your goal wasn't necessarily to be a spotter, but just to be in the sport in some way or fashion, and you made that happen. Was the goal to always be a spotter, or was it just to be in the sport in some way?
Nah, the goal, of course, whenever I was little, was to be a race car driver. But man, it is so expensive. Even if you have the financing that it takes to do it, for everything to go right, it is a big undertaking. It's so difficult. So the guys that get to do this on Friday, Saturday, and Sundays in the truck, Xfinity Cup, that was the dream to be able to do that. But I'm pretty sure I've got the second best job because we get to see everything happen firsthand from the best seat in the house up on the roof, and I love it. You're part of the game from the time the green flag drops to the checker flag falls. So I'm pretty happy with where I'm at.
So, what do you feel like was your big break in NASCAR spotting? Like, what opportunity do you feel like advanced you to the position you are in today?
Yeah, so whenever I worked for a small Bush team, which was turned into Nationwide, which is now Xfinity, and we had a really small team, so I got to do several jobs all at once. Where today everything is so specialized, so I got to learn a ton, changing tires and working on the motors and swapping motors out, doing fabrication work. We did it all. Everybody had to pitch in. So we learned so much on that little group that I still use those skills today. So once that operation it folded because of a small deal, needed sponsorship, I got recruited by a cup team. So the heartbreak of that team going out of business was so sad for everybody, but then it led to having an opportunity on the cup side. And I got a call. I got recruited to spot for Casey Mears in the Cup Series. Spotted for him for a couple of years, and then Montoya came in, and somehow, some way, we were on the same car and on the same team. So I got spot for Juan Pablo Montoya for 5 years, and every race, even still today, when the green flag drops, there's something you haven't seen before. You are learning every lap of every race. When it seems like things are boring and not much is happening in the race, there's so much strategy being rolled out with fuel mileage and how the car is handling and how far you can go before you need tires. It's pretty wild to see all those things come about and play out.
And the spotter on the super speedways are ridiculously important. I mean, just having the scanner on at Daytona and just hearing you walk Kyle through to that top 10 finish was incredible. Atlanta as well. I remember telling you, like, don't let him to your outside, don't let him to your outside, don't let him to your outside. And you got him all the way up to a 11th place finish because of that. That's how important the spotter is. So we're going to go back to Daytona. You have 2 Daytona 500 championships. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how both of them came through and what that meant to you?
Yeah. So the first one was 2015 with Joey Logano, and that was a time where studying race tape and learning the tendencies of other drivers, and we still do that today. And a lot of other people have gotten very good at it. I wouldn't say that Joey and I were the first to do it, but we spent a lot of time figuring out the reason people made the moves they did. So if somebody made a good move on lap 50, we'd go back and we would watch the 5 laps leading up to that moment and try to figure it out. Well, you can figure all that out, and it's like, okay, he made this move because of that. Well, then you have to apply that whenever you go to the next race and be able to recognize it in real time, going full speed, no replays, no slow motion. It's happening in real time, and you have to recognize those moments, and you miss so many of them. But if you can capitalize on a few crucial moves, it can help you advance to the front pretty quickly. And it's so fun to be able to do that, but it does require a lot of studying, a lot of just paying attention to what's going on, and it's tough, yet it's so fun whenever you do well.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like you have became hands down one of the best on the super speedways. And you talk about the studying. What kind of work did you have to put in to get good at this, or was it just trial and error over the 27 years you put into the sport that got you to this point?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of trial and error because there's no school that teaches you how to do this. There's no right or wrong way to get started. you get involved in it, and then you have to find a race team that trusts you with all of their work, all of their resources. Just think about how many people work on an Xfinity team or a Cup team. All that work building up, all the sponsorship, all the preparation, the fabrication, the paint, everything that everybody works so hard for. It is in the driver's hands, and you're helping guide him around the track. So it's a lot of responsibility, and it's cool to have that on your shoulders, because there's some days that they're tough days, and you have to power through it. You can't let it get you down. You can't let it beat you up. It's just like a bad football play. You might get tackled and lose some yards, but you got to get up and go at it again if you want to do well.
Absolutely. So, those who don't know, Tal basically has two full-time jobs here. One, every Saturday, he's spotting for Kyle Weatherman in the 91 car. Number two, he'll go Sunday and spot for Ricky Stenhouse Jr. over at JTG. Is it difficult having to go through these practice and qualifying sessions on Saturday and going back and forth, where it feels like you got the JTG hat on and then you're back with the DGM stuff? Is it hard doing both versus just showing up and having one job, one task?
Yeah, I really enjoy spotting the Xfinity races on Saturday, as well as the truck races on a lot of the Fridays. It helps you get warmed up to the race weekend. It helps you see the racetrack. You get to see where the safety trucks are. If they putting resin or the PJ1 down, you get to see what the groove looks like. You get to see if the guys are running high, if the guys are running low. There's so many tendencies that you get a feel for on Friday and on Saturdays, so that whenever Sunday starts, you're ready to rock.
Absolutely ready to rock and roll. So, looking behind you, we see a grandfather clock from Martinsville,
Oh, yeah.
I would assume. Tell us about that, because
Oh, yeah.
that baby is looking cool back there.
Yeah, so every 15 minutes, that thing dings to let you know that you got a Martinsville clock sitting in the garage. But now that came from Johnny Sauter. Whenever I spotted for him in the truck series, we won both races that year at Martinsville and won the championship. So that was a gift from Johnny Sauter for winning the championship in the trucks.
That is so awesome. So, as a spotter,
Yeah.
do you get a trophy for every win, or is it just the ones that you want to reach out for?
No. Yeah, there's a few milestone races. We get sometimes an opportunity to get a miniature trophy. Every now and then, a driver might get you a replica of the real one. That's happened a couple times whenever you've made a good call or a really important race. But like the Daytona 500, you get a really nice ring. But we've also got miniature trophies that are really cool. I should have brought them out to show you, but they're stashed in my son's room.
Absolutely.
But
That's awesome.
yeah, you can get like miniature style trophies for some key races. Not every single race, but there's cool stuff that comes from Bristol, Dover, Michigan. I'm looking at Texas gives out a cool little miniature trophy every now and then. So yeah, it's neat to have whenever they come about. You never want to expect anything like that, but whenever it happens, it's a really cool token to remember it by.
For sure. So I'm going to go ahead and pass you over to Cameron Romano, and he's going to give
Yeah.
you some good questions here for Mr. Tal Boyd.
All right.
Okay. So, first question I want to ask is just overall, whether it was this season, last season, years ago, what moment stuck out to you the most? Like, what surprised you the most, whether it was this season, last season?
Wow. That's a hard question, because every week it seems like there's a surprise lately. There's the amount of cars that run really well, I would say, is a surprising thing about this season. And that can go for every series, especially Xfinity series, because there are 15 or 20 cars that if they won, it's not that big of a surprise, because everybody has good equipment and they're fast. Even the track position is so hard to get whenever you are, say, 20th place. you might be running the same lap time as the leader. You just have to get there to be in the top 5. So I think my biggest surprise is how fast everybody is and how difficult it is to do well.
All right. My next question, on a typical weekend where you do happen to have some downtime, whether it's between practice, qualifying, Xfinity Series, or Cup Series, what do you often find yourself doing in that spare time, if you do have any?
I'll tell you what, a few of us have really enjoyed finding the good restaurants around town.
Yes.
I'm a foodie, man. I love to find good food. When I go to Vegas, I rarely gamble. I would rather go to a really good restaurant and spend some money to see the way it should be done. So yeah, that we kind of me and a couple buddies find the good spots to eat. That's my favorite.
My third and final question for now before I pass it back to DLB. Being a spotter, obviously you mentioned yourself, you have the best seat in the house. You're on top of the tower basically. Is there anybody that works alongside you that would sometimes show that they have a fear of heights?
Every now and then, there are people that won't do it or have no desire to be up there because of the heights. It's kind of deceiving because the grandstands usually taper down from where we're at. So if you're looking forward, it's not that bad. But if you look behind you, you're a long way up in the air. And I think what the place with the most sensation of height is the Nashville Super Speedway. That
Really?
tower is huge. Yes, you are. I don't know what the height is from the ground, but it sure feels like that's the highest one for sure.
All right. On that note, I'm going to pass it back to DLB.
I got a fun question here. So, the drivers get a little frustrated on a hot day, and they'll sometimes yell over the radio, "Go tell that guy's spotter that I'm going to reckon if he does X, Y, Z." I want to know what it's really like up on the spotters stand. Or are the spotters coming over angry when the drivers say something? Or do they just come over and tap you on the shoulder and be like, "Hey, he's a little frustrated, tell him to calm it down"? How does that work?
Yeah.
Because the drivers are furious.
Oh, yeah. It's about 50-50 on that. There's sometimes that we're more mad than the drivers are because we have an overall view of what's going on, and we might feel like, oh, that guy's trying to rough you up or take your lane. Well, that's kind of the name of the game these days is taking the lane of the guy that you're racing. And it's very cutthroat out there, and it's hard. And so there's a lot of communication up there. If somebody is in the way and you're like, "Hey man, give us a little bit of a break," but then you have to look at it through their shoes. They're trying to get all they can that day too. And I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of being mad at people. Well, then there's days where I'm the one that is in the way, and you're like, "Man, we're just trying everything we can to stay on the lead lap or race for the lucky dog." So you have to put yourself in their shoes, but is a lot of communication up there, and sometimes it's heated, sometimes it's like, "Hey, look, my guy's mad," and you just have a little talk and understand it. But yeah, it goes from A to Z of all the things that go on up there.
I mean, we see fights on pit roads and we hear everything on the radio. We don't have cameras on the spotter stand to see what's going on up there. I'm sure you got so many crazy stories from this over the years of things that has happened.
It's not that crazy because we have to stand elbow to elbow with each other every week. On pit road, the pit road is enormous. People can get away from each other and not even have to see each other. We are in a little area that you can look back and look down and see every single person that's up there. And so you have to take that into consideration also.
So do you have a favorite track to spot at on the schedule where you're just like, hey, this is the one I love the most, rather if that's just the scenery or the area that it's in, or maybe you just feel like that is the best for you or the best that fits your skill set?
I take it off of how much action the track has. I love being at Bristol. I love being at Martinsville. Everything's close quarters, fast. Martinsville's a little slower than Bristol. However, that means they're not afraid to have contact with each other. And even though they're going a lot slower, it's still very aggressive racing. So I love those tracks. I also love the super speedways. So there's a lot of things that make every track has its own characteristic, right? So there's some things you like about it, some things you don't. Pocono is very difficult for a spotter because turn one is so far away. The car's at a really bad angle, and it's basically just hard to see them. And you always want to give your person a good information, whether they're clear or not. You never want to be unsure of it. And at Pocono, there's a lot of times where you're unsure, and it helps to have a really fast car. So, that's a tough one, but I'm a big fan of the short tracks, a lot of action.
Do you feel like Pocono is the most challenging, or which one do you feel like is the most challenging to spot at?
It's one of the most challenging. I would say that the road courses are the most challenging, and it makes you feel very uneasy because you can't see the car on the whole lap, and you bring in people to help you spot. And even though I trust the people that are on the radio, it's an uneasy feeling because I still feel like I'm responsible for the car, even if I can't see it. So it's hard to relinquish that sometimes and just wait on them to come back by to see how you're doing.
It's so wild. I mean, but that's what makes it so fun, especially out on the road courses.
Yeah.
So your experience with the 91 crew this year, Kyle Weatherman, and everything you've been doing with that, can you walk us a little bit about the season with Kyle and how that's been?
Man, I love spotting for Kyle. He is very fast. He qualifies excellent. He's a good race car driver, and it's like I was saying earlier. You have to have everything line up perfectly, and then have good luck to have those good top 10 days. And it's difficult. So there's so many weeks that you have a good car, you're fast, and you have good pit stops, and you're battling, and you might get a top 20 out of it. And then there's other weeks where you do the same exact thing, and you're a fifth. So it's how the dominoes fall sometimes, and it's fun spotting for Kyle. Here lately, the last few races, he's done really well, and he gets better and better by the week. So it's very cool.
So winning 2 Daytona 500s, is there any milestone on the table that you want just to say that you've done it for your career? Or I know there's probably not anything you feel like you need at this point to prove that you're a great spotter, but is there anything that you would that is on the milestone, on the radar, that you want to accomplish as a spotter here in the next 10 years or however long you're going to be spotting for the rest of your career?
I think that there's a couple tracks that I have not gotten a win at, and that's Darlington and I would say Indianapolis, the oval at Indianapolis. Those two are pretty high sought after races. I was lucky enough to spot 2 consecutive night wins at Bristol. So that was really, really cool. I mean, that was electric cool. It don't get any better. So there's a few races like that, but I think just being consistent and running well and being up front is satisfying to me as a spotter, because you're helping your team, you're helping your driver, you're helping everybody that works on that car get a good result for their hard work. So if you can come out of the day with a solid top 10, to me, that's a pretty good day. Now, there's days where you can be 8th and be mad, and there's days where you're 8th and you're happy as can be. So it's funny how this sport is such a roller coaster, but at the end of the day, it's just if you have a solid day with a solid finish, it's been a good one.
And NASCAR we're mid playoffs right now. I would imagine the pressure is getting hot. A spotter that has been in the playoffs, battled for championships, contended for championships, you've seen it all. How is that pressure on the spotter stand, or do you guys just kind of show up and do your job as normal as usual and leave it to the crew chiefs and the drivers and the race teams to battle it out on the track?
Yeah, you have to be aware of what's going on. You have to kind of know where you're at or where you're going to be, but you don't want to change it so much you don't want to change what got you there, if that makes sense. You want to have the same focus. You want to do your restart picks the same way. You want to do your pit road calls the same way. The big part is the support that you have from the pit box and the engineers, and on the Cup side we have guys in the war room. I feel like I can do my job the same, whether it's the trying to get points for the championship or trying to win a certain race, because those guys are so on top of everything. They will let me know on a secondary channel that, hey, we need to do this. Hey, we're going to short pit them. Hey, we're going to go long. I don't have to worry about the strategy part of it. Those guys have it covered, and I can just do my thing the way I normally do it. And if we need to change something, then they can bring me in on that.
For any young kid out there, 12 years old, 10 years old, 15, maybe 20 or 25, that's like, I want to be in the position that Tal Boyd is in today. What is the best advice you would give them today to one day be in that position and win Daytona 500s and spot for some of the best in the world, whether if that's Montoya or Logano or Weatherman or Stenhouse or whatever the case may be? What kind of advice would you give them?
It's a long road. You can't just watch a couple races and then go maybe help a couple short track guys out and think that in the second or third year you're going to jump up there and just do it at this level, because this is my 27th year traveling on a NASCAR race team, and I still learn every day. I learn every race something different that I didn't know before. So the more experience you can get on a short track level, and then maybe progress to ARCA and maybe a truck after a few years, it's a slow process. You don't need to rush it, because there's so many things that you need to look for and that you're responsible for. If you get to the big leagues too early, you might not have the knowledge that you need to totally grasp what's going on. So take it slow, learn, and enjoy it. You know, a lot of people rush through the short track ranks and want to make it to the top. The best times you'll ever have is on a Saturday night at a short track at your local hometown. I'm telling you, enjoy it while you're there and learn in the process. Make good friends and keep your friends close, because you never know. Everybody, I know people in this sport that I knew 30 years ago whenever I was a kid. So it's really neat to see them progress, and the friends that you make along the way is pretty important.
That's so cool. I mean, I feel like any position in the NASCAR industry, even if you're a photographer, crew chief, anything, crew member, there's only so many positions and so many people want them positions. I feel like the connections you make is the prime way to get them positions, which is so wild, but them connections are so strong, and also just having the knowledge and years put in before you get to that point. Even with what I'm doing here on the content creation side, like I put 8 years into content creation before I got in this position, and fortunate that it played out how it did, and I just happened to make the right connection with DriveSmart that got me at the racetrack every week, and it's such a cool deal because of that. But I'm going to pass it back to Cameron here and see what final questions Cameron Romano has for you here on the table.
Yeah. So, one of the questions that I do have, we know the postseason is winding down. I think we only probably have about another month or so before championship weekend. What does the off season look like for a spotter?
You know, a lot of other guys have different things going on. I myself have a little fabrication side business that I make different things for. For instance, I have deal where I make trophies for a big sprint car race in Las Vegas that comes up in November. So I stay really busy with little things like that, and I don't want it to be too big, but I want it to be something where I can hone my skills and stay busy, keep your mind active. Plus, my son he does like American Ninja Warrior type competitions. He's only 10 years old, so we travel a lot doing ninja. So I look forward to the off season because I get to go to competitions with him and my wife, and we have a lot of fun traveling the country watching him compete at a pretty high level. So we stay really busy.
That's awesome. I've grown up watching American Ninja Warrior for a little bit, and I just think that that's really cool.
Oh yeah.
My final question, as far as next year, the 2025 season, what track are you looking forward to the most? I know you mentioned earlier that Talladega is one of your favorite tracks and that you also do enjoy short tracks like Bristol, Martinsville. Is there any other tracks that you look forward to in the coming season?
Next year with the Cup Series, there's a couple new tracks on the roster. So we'll be going to Bowman Gray, and I've never set foot in Bowman Gray. I've never seen it. So it's only 40 minutes from where I live, and I've still never seen it. So it looks like I'm going to get to see it very soon. And Mexico City is going to be a really cool experience. But I've been there before. I was actually with Montoya and spotted a win at Mexico City. So it's kind of weird that I've never been to Bowman Gray, which is 40 minutes away, but I've been to Victory Lane in Mexico City. So it's kind of crazy how the sport works. But yeah, those new places are cool, and I always like going to Daytona. There's nothing like the beginning of the year when you have a new paint job and new clothes, and you roll into Daytona and get ready for the Daytona 500. That's a pretty special feeling.
Well, absolutely. I went to the Daytona 500 for the first time this year, actually. I've been to Daytona before for the summer race,
Yeah.
but nothing beats the electricity in the air, the feeling that this is the Daytona 500. This is the biggest race of the season.
Oh yeah,
And I'm,
it is
I,
so cool.
yeah, I surprised my mom with an extra ticket. Originally, I had a friend of mine, and we planned this whole trip out. And then a couple weeks before, she said, "Oh, something came up with work. I can't go." So I call up my mom, and I'm like, "Hey, I have an extra ticket for the 500. Do you want to go?" And she's like, "Absolutely." So I
That's
know
awesome.
I have the tab bookmarked in my phone in my web browser. The Daytona 500 fan cam. We're sitting all the way up in section
Oh
391 right before going into turn one. So we're
yeah.
all the way up there. Every single time I've been to Daytona for the Coke Zero 400, I've always sat closer to the track, but there's nothing like sitting all the way up top
Oh yeah.
towards the roof where you see everything happen all at once.
So much. Yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah, I encourage everybody, anybody listening to this, if you've never been to a NASCAR race, go to a NASCAR race. It don't matter where it's at. It don't matter which one, because I'm how old am I? I'm 47 years old. And whenever I see a race car go by at full speed, it still gives you tingles because they
Right?
are so fast. They're loud. And when those guys get the green flag and take off for a race, there's nothing like it. And it is so cool. So I encourage anybody, just go to a race, buy a
Yeah.
ticket, go in the stands, because you will rarely meet a stranger at a race. Everybody that goes is so cool. They want to be there, and they have their people that they cheer for. And it's just a fun time. Everywhere you go, it's neat to see the people that love being at the race. And I encourage everybody to go because it's a pretty cool feeling to feel those cars go by.
Absolutely. I encourage all of my friends that have never even watched a NASCAR race to go to a
Yeah.
NASCAR race in person. I've been to 3 races this year. I've been to the Daytona 500. I've even watched the duels in person. I've been to Pocono this year, and a couple weeks ago I just went up to Watkins Glen because I won a
Nice.
couple of tickets.
Nice.
I usually go to Dover. Dover's a fun track. Pocono is
Yeah.
another fun track. Daytona is always fun. Um, I think on that note, I'm gonna pass it back to DLB for any final thoughts and questions.
I got a few final questions here. The first one is obviously when NASCAR tried dirt racing on the Cup schedule, how was that as a spotter? Because it seems like it was just a big dirt cloud there at Bristol.
It was very difficult. The first year there was a lot of mud, then it dried out, and there's a lot of dust. So yeah, it was hard. It was neat. It was neat to see the difference. The cars had the big dirt tires on them and things that we haven't experienced much, but it was neat to see. But I'm really glad that we went back to the regular Bristol because that's one of my favorite tracks, and we covered it with dirt. So if we went to a true dirt track, I'd be up for doing it again. But I like Bristol being Bristol.
I love it.
Can
I,
we?
I, I love Bristol as well. What's that, Cameron?
No, I was gonna say, can we get a petition to have NASCAR go to either Knoxville or Eldora for a dirt
That
race? Because I think that would be cool. I mean, we've seen the trucks run at Eldora, we've seen the trucks run at Knoxville. I would love to see the Cup cars run at either of those tracks.
Yeah, it'd be cool.
It'd be super cool. So, my final question is, do you have a favorite moment or favorite memory throughout your 27 years in racing? Is there one that stands out that is just your favorite that means the most to you?
Man, there's so many good ones. I think that my favorite moment was the first, even though the Daytona 500 is remarkable and it's a life-changing race to be able to win, the first night race at Bristol that I won with spotting for Logano was so cool because we won that race on Saturday and my son was born the next day. So that was a really cool weekend because we were so successful at the race and just a real hyped up event. And then we were expecting him to come along, and it happened just bam, bam, bam right there in a few days. So I think that first night race at Bristol was so cool.
That sounds like a very, very emotional roller coaster of a weekend. So before we get
Oh
you
yeah.
off here, is there anyone you'd like a shout out or thank here before we close out?
Oh man, just all my family and friends. Shout out to my son Bentley, the always ninja, my wife Suzanne, and without them at home and keeping everything going, it makes it difficult whenever we travel so much. So it's great for them to be uh, busy and supportive, and it's so fun to be with them.
Absolutely. And where can the people find you over on X or Twitter or any other social media accounts?
Yeah, so my TikTok is the best thing that I like going. So at Tab Boyd on TikTok, at Tab_Boyd, and then also on X, Spotter Tab.
Killing the TikTok game. Well, we appreciate you very much for coming on here today, Taub. So much for it's been such a cool interview. I mean, I feel like we got a little bit of everything in this one. So much appreciation for you coming on here today.
Man, it's been fun. Thank you so much.
Cameron, we had Tab Boyd on. How do you feel about the interview? I mean, for me, I think the biggest thing was the emotion for winning Bristol, then having the birth of his child literally the same weekend.
Right? That was that honestly the whole interview with Tab Boyd has been amazing. Talking about how he came up in the ranks of racing, talking about spotting for guys like Joey Logano, spotting for Ricky Stenhouse Jr., all that good stuff. But I think, yeah, having that Bristol night race win, and then his son is born that same weekend it's obviously it's very special. But yeah, all in all, I think it was a great episode. 3 episodes in for me. I feel like I said at the beginning of the show, I think we're just getting started here.
You're a natural at it. That said, I think we should go ahead and close out the stream, and that's going to wrap it up for episode number 18 of the Pit Crew podcast. Everyone have a nice, safe Talladega weekend.